Mabel the Lovelorn Dwarf, Chapter 8. I wished males didn't want their mates to have stout bellies. However, as it said in 102 Signs She's Interested, Female Dwarf Body Language of Love, a stout figure is the key to attracting a male. Still, I needed to increase my appetite, or at least eat as much as I possibly could, even if I felt like I was going to burst. I didn't think I could finish all the spit roasted pork and deep fried dumplings the cafeteria staff stacked on my lunch plate tray, no matter how delicious it looked. I pulled on my tunic to appear thicker, not like it made any difference since the belt cinched my waist. With my figure, I'd fit in so much better with elves, I bet. Aramis would love me the way I looked. No, I had to stop thinking that way. No more dreaming of elves or of Aramis. No matter how much I loved him, I had to turn my attention to finding a mate, a real one, a dwarf. It was up to me to make this happen. I would much rather focus my energy on training for regionals, but I had to do this for my family. It was my duty as the lone female. I'd known this all along. I had to stop dithering. I wasn't going to miss a smile from a male, and I most certainly was not going to give anyone any reason to insult me or my family the way Emma had. I'd considered all the available males I knew and decided to aim for the one who had the most to offer, Ben. Perhaps there could have been a more ideal choice, considering how he had chased Emma. She had picked Zach, so Ben had to choose someone else. Even if he still wanted her, he'd soon realize he could do worse than courting me. Emma and Zach were always together, which meant whenever Ben and I were with our friends, we were together too. I had my plan all worked out. I was going to make him want me by showing him I possessed the qualities he looked for in a mate. If it didn't work with Ben, I'd have to pick another fellow, find out what he wanted, and basically start over. Ben had to want me, or I'd be so exhausted from the search, I'd have no energy to love or mine or have dwarflings. According to Female Dwarf Body Language of Love, the number one way to let a male know you are interested in him, specifically him, is to be beside him at all possible times, whether it be at the pub, at work, or out with friends. Focus all your attention on him, laugh at his jokes, and be interested in what he says. Emma hovered around Zach, laughing at everything and never letting him out of her sight. It worked for her, and it would work for me. I hoped Ben hadn't found himself someone to court since I saw him yesterday. Zach and Ben sat alone at a table in one corner. My heart skipped a beat. As Emma and I neared their table, I ran my fingers through my measly beard. I really had to do something to thicken it. There must be some kind of conditioner or product. Maybe I could do what Emma did and trim some of my hair and glue it onto my chin, or maybe I could get Ben to like me whatever my beard looked like. Ben smiled at us, and Emma grabbed the seat next to him, which meant I could sit across from him. I smiled, willing Ben to look at me, so I could hold his gaze for a few seconds, then look away demurely. I've had the most frustrating morning, Emma said the moment we sat down. Ben leaned towards her, and I gave up trying to catch his eye. What's wrong, pet? Zach reached across the table and held Emma's hand. I have been working here almost a year now, and I still have not found my own first emerald. This morning I thought I'd found a bed of emeralds. I did exactly what Frankie taught us to do. Turns out I was working nothing more than a rough patch of rock. I am such a failure. Emma covered her face with her hands. Poor Emma. No, you're not. Ben put an arm around her shoulders, and Zach stood on the other side of her, rubbing her back, hugging her. Why didn't you help her, Mabel? Zach asked. Excuse me? I would have if I'd known. Emma, why didn't you say something? You know Philip or I would have helped you. She should have told us first, not Zach and Ben. Why, so you could get another first emerald? What had I done to make her accuse me of stealing from my workmates? How could she think I was full of greed? Golden axes have always worked hard for every gem. Emma sniffed, and both Ben and Zach raced to pass her a handkerchief. Doesn't matter anyway, she said, taking them both. It's just another useless place to mine. Nothing is useless, Ben said. A lot of miners go years before they get their first gem, Zack said. You're doing fine, pet. You really are, Ben said. It took some of my brothers over 5 years before they found their first emeralds. Now they're among the top in their fields. True, she wiped her eyes, though I hadn't actually seen any tears. And don't be afraid to ask Mabel for help, Ben said. I appreciated his belief in my skills and that he knew I could help, but Philip, Emma, and I were a good team. We didn't need him or Zack telling us how to work. I pushed back my tray with half the food untouched. My stomach turned and I trembled under the accusatory stares. I had to get out of here. I left them and walked back to her crosscut in a fog of anger. How dare she accuse me like that? We were supposed to be best friends. She was not going to get away with those lies and accusations. She knew better than anyone that I would not steal. No one in my family stole. I clutched my axe and took my frustration out on the stone wall. I scratched at the rock and ignored Emma when she sauntered in, humming, happy, like she hadn't just tried to ruin my reputation. When Philip returned, I stopped working and said, We have to talk, all of us. What's going on? He asked. Emma chipped at the wall, ignoring me. Emma, stop, I said. We have a problem. We do? Philip asked. I rested my axe on my shoulder. Emma is unhappy working with us. Instead of telling us, her workmates, who she should be telling, she's running off telling everyone else. Only then did she stop working and face us, blushing deeply, and her lips pressed tight together. I couldn't bear to bring up her accusations of theft. They hurt too much. If there's a problem, you should talk to us first. How can we fix things if you don't tell us? Why would I tell you? It's the two of you who don't want me to find my first emerald. Excuse me? Philip asked, taken aback. You keep making me work in areas where you know there are no emeralds, so you and Mabel will get all the firsts. So it wasn't just me she was accusing, but Philip as well. No one knows where the emeralds are until we get there, Philip said. You're doing as valuable a job as Mabel and I, eliminating places that there aren't emeralds, digging us to a place where we will find them. Exactly. You want me to do the grunt work, keeping me from finding my first ever gem. You're paid your share of the beds, Philip said. But they aren't first emeralds, Emma said. Keep working, you will get there. And you can always ask for help if we're working somewhere else. I don't need help. What I need is a better place to mine. Then I suggest you get to work, Philip said, because you're not going to find a more productive stope than this one. Stop whining, stop flirting, and maybe you will find something. He picked up his axe and returned to work. In spite of everything she'd said, the accusations, the hurt, I felt bad. She was wrong. We didn't know where the emeralds were until we found them, but maybe it wasn't fair that we had her working on her own. Is there a reason Emma can't work with me? I asked. There are only 3 of us and a huge cavern to mine, Philip said. We need to spread out. I needed to do something to prove to Emma she was wrong, that I hadn't deliberately kept her from extracting gems or finding her first ever emerald. That I wasn't a thief. Fine, Emma, you work with Philip and I'll be here where you were. I only wanted to make sure if any of us had a problem with our arrangements, we'd talk to each other first, okay? Sure, Philip shrugged and returned to excavating emeralds. No problem, Emma said just as casually as Philip. Mabel, why don't you come help me? I don't think he wants me working with him right now. I didn't really want to work with her right now either, but if it would stop her from ruining me, then I would. I felt the stone. I couldn't see why she'd been so frustrated by it. By all signs of the texture of the rocks, one tap and a bed of emeralds would be exposed. Not there. Feel this, she said. I ignored Philip's snorts, disgusted as grunts. I ignored Philip's snorts, disguised as grunts. Emma pointed me to the pure granite stone she'd insisted on working. Hadn't she paid attention to Frankie? I continued to feel the stone while I decided my best option for fixing the situation without embarrassing her and without her thinking I intended to get the first emerald. I cleared my throat. Right. This stone is too solid. We need to work around it, get at the emeralds from behind. Maybe if we chip away at the other stone. Why don't you start? I have to step out for a few minutes. Are you all right? Philip asked. Ate a little too much. Maybe you can help her? I can do it myself. Besides, I wouldn't want to distract Philip from his most important work. I hoped this worked. If it did, they would stop fighting. If it didn't, Emma might become unbearable. I hovered outside the entrance of the crosscut. Emma chipped at the stone, grumbling. If she didn't hurry up, I'd have to get back in and help her, and she would not want me to. Besides, why shouldn't Emma experience the elation of finding her first ever gem? Emma grumbled louder, the harder she hit the stone. I cringed. I could just see the emeralds cracking inside. At least the chipping settled into a rhythm, then a pause, and a gasp from Emma, followed by a high-pitched squeal and, "Dear gods of diamonds and mortar!" I ran in. What? What is it? Are you okay? Look, I found it. I bet this bed is huge, bigger than any either of you have found. And you told me to dig here to get behind a rock a few feet over. Emma pocketed her first emerald, half the size of the palm of her hand. Philip stood at my side, studying her find. Well done. You don't seem to need Mabel, so can I have her back? Please, take her. My insides turned. That first belongs to you, Philip muttered as we headed back to our own emeralds. If you hadn't told her where to look, she'd forever be chipping that wrong stone. Maybe, but she needs it more than I do. First emerald in hand, Emma became much more talkative than she had been in a long time. Every few minutes she said things like, I am so relieved. I can't believe it took me this long. This is only the first of many. Rachel had her first ever in her first year as a miner, and she's been boasting about it since I started. She says with all of her first profits and the earnings of her future mate, they're going to buy themselves a mountain dwelling. I was glad I didn't have a sister to compete with. My brothers were nothing but supportive of me. Philip and I kept on working. I did my best to ignore her, but Emma's constant babble was difficult to shut out. It doesn't matter, she continued. Even if Rachel marries the wealthiest dwarf in Gilliam, they still can't buy a mountain dwelling if he needs Rachel's income to help him. She doesn't have as much as she says she does. Besides, there aren't any mountain dwellings for sale. There never are. Anyway, I am so relieved, like a huge weight has lifted off me. Now I can prove my worth as a miner. Rachel's always telling me I started working here too soon, and I hadn't really reached full maturity, even though I looked it. Now my first ever is bigger than hers. I wish she hadn't insulted me in front of Ben and Zach because of her rivalry with Rachel. Sorry about being such a grump earlier, Emma said. Doug couldn't understand why you two were finding so many emeralds and I hadn't found any. It's all he would talk about. He'll be so proud when I tell him how I found this one and how big this bed is. I'd never tell her I tricked her. Hopefully she'd ease up on me and my family after this. After our shift, we headed to the Prospector Tavern. Taverns frequented by co-workers was one of the top places listed in Meet Him and Mate Him as ideal for finding a mate, because that's where I'd find someone with similar interests as me. Ben was still my best option for a mate, if I could convince him to forget what Emma had done to me at lunch. We caught up with Ben and Zach on the road to the Prospector. Emma squeezed herself between the two, and I pushed my way between her and Ben. She launched into her tale of finding the emeralds. Ben leaned forward to see her, so I moved to his other side, making it easier for him to hear her, and I didn't have to be so close to her, listening to her tell how she found the emeralds without any help. Mabel, a word please. Frankie stood outside the Prospector, Philip beside him. Great. Frankie, please don't be upset. Emma stepped in front, as if to protect me from my brother. It was just a lapse in judgment, that's all. Philip opened the door to the pub. Come on, I'll get the first round, he said to Zach and Ben. What did she do? Ben asked as the door closed behind them. Fantastic. She was going to tell him I didn't know how to mine, and I'd have to try even harder to win his affection. Frankie, he put his arm around me and led me away from the tavern. You're not in trouble. Mikey asked me to come get you. He wants you to start practicing again. Regionals are coming up. Right. Thank the gods I didn't want to sit in the tavern listening to Emma all evening. It would feel great to throw some axes again. Philip told me what you did to help Emma. And here it comes. He is concerned word will get out and you will be disgraced. I assured him I would stop all negative rumors and make sure your reputation as a miner is upheld. Then maybe he should be in the prospector right now instead of walking me home. It really can't be disputed since you've got 5 first emeralds to her 1, he continued. I understand you didn't want to embarrass her, but Mabel, don't do it again. You weren't there, Frankie. She accused Philip and me of purposely stopping her from finding emeralds. She practically accused me of stealing. I had to do something. Frankie pressed his lips together and tensed up. He breathed deep and relaxed. She had no right to accuse you of anything, especially theft. If she can't pay attention long enough to figure out where the emeralds are and how to mine them, then she doesn't deserve to work in the mines. I know she's your best friend, but if it were up to me, she wouldn't have been hired so early. You're not being fair. Philip and I have been lucky. It's more than that, more than being blessed by the dwarf gods. You have a definite talent at spotting the right stone. Who knows how many beds have been missed because of her? I'd like you to go in early tomorrow and go over all the stone she worked and see if she missed anything. I'm not going to embarrass her like that, I said. If it makes you feel better, tell her I made you do it, as punishment for telling her the wrong place to excavate. No, don't. It might make her gloat more than she already is. I'd rather you tell her you're checking to see what she'd missed, or not say anything at all. What would Emma say about me if she saw me going over her part of the crosscut? She'll hate me. Mining isn't about being nice or mean or making friends or enemies. There is nothing personal about mining. It is about serving the gods of the mountains and receiving their gifts. If someone isn't good at mining, if they are too impatient and not devout in their worship of the gods, they shouldn't be mining. You have talent and are building a strong reputation. I don't want Emma to take it away from you because you feel bad for her. Okay, Frankie, I get it. I won't help her anymore, but I'm not making a fool of her. I turned the corner to the back of our house. Mikey stood there, throwing axes in hand. I grabbed an axe, imagining the throwing post was Emma's gloating face, raised my arm and hurled the axe. It felt amazing to take out my frustration on the throwing post. If you're enjoying the adventures of Mabel Golden Axe, don't forget to subscribe below.